Hey guys, this is just a quick video to explain the Dbq rubric that I will be using to grade your your Dbq. This is the modified Dbq rubric that was used for last year's AP test, designed to be used with 5-document Dbq. So I've already gone over all this stuff in class, but I want to offer you guys this video in case you don't remember some of the stuff or you feel like you need a refresher. And it might be useful to watch all of this before, like maybe the day before you come in to write your DBQ, so you remember exactly what I'm going to be looking for. So I'm just going to tell you exactly what I'm looking for, so that way you know what to do on your DBQ. So let's start with contextualization and thesis. I generally recommend that you group these two together in your intro paragraph, using the contextualization as kind of the broad opener, and then narrowing down to your thesis. So for contextualization, I recommend between 2 to 3 sentences, and it needs to be true historical evidence, or true historical statements that help to situate the reader into the time period or region that you are going to be discussing. And it has to relate to the prompt. So in the DBQ that we're doing, talking about the reactions of Christian and Muslim cultures to the Mongols, you could tell me either about stuff about the Mongols, you could tell me stuff about the Western European culture in the Middle Ages, you could tell me about Middle Eastern culture in the Middle Ages. But it would need to be true facts about some of those regions, and then you would want to kind of somehow have it connect to whatever your prompt is. So remember, 2 to 3 sentences, not a page. Don't do that. Your thesis should be 1 to 2 sentences, and it should specifically answer the prompt. So my question for you guys is, how did Christian and Muslim observers react to the Mongols? Your answer should say something like, between the years 1200 and 1350, Christian and Muslim observers responded to the Mongols blank, blank, and blank. It needs to directly answer the prompt. You also want to outline what your reasoning is going to be. So you need to go into a little bit of specific detail about what you're going to talk about. So you don't want your thesis to just be both Christians and Muslims responded negatively to the Mongols. You could start with that, but then you'd want to have a follow-up sentence that would say Christians and Muslims responded negatively to the Mongols. More specifically, they demonstrated both fear and contempt for the Mongols as the Mongol Empire expanded, or something like that. But you want to make it clear to your reader what your body paragraphs are going to look like. Like, what specifically are you going to try and prove about whatever the prompt is? So I recommend that as your intro paragraph. So start with 2 to 3 sentences of contextualization, narrowing down to eventually get to your thesis, which is a specific statement responding to the prompt. All right, now the kind of meat of your essay is going to be providing evidence for your thesis. And you're going to need to do that primarily by using the documents that you have been given. And so you need to describe the documents and then explain how the documents support your thesis. So, and you'll need to do that 4 times to get full credit for those bits. So when you describe a document, you need to make sure that you don't quote the document, but rather that you simply paraphrase the relevant part of the document. So you don't need to paraphrase the entire document. You just need to paraphrase whatever part of the document is relevant for your argument. And you should try to do this in 1 sentence if possible, like a 1-sentence description of the relevant bits of the document. So you could say in document 2, the Pope, in his letter to the Mongols, compares the Mongols to wild animals, demonstrating, period. And then you could go on to say how this supports your thesis. So you could say what it means that the Pope compares the Mongols to wild animals. So that's going to be one of the main things that you do is you spend time describing documents and then showing how the documents support your argument. So one of the harder things that you need to do in the DBQ is on top of that, for 2 documents, you should try to explain how the point of view of the document influences your argument. So if you think that the author of a source is particularly representative, you could talk about how his views aren't just representing his views, but are broadly representative of a large group. You could talk about how the author's hidden purpose adds some kind of meaning to the text, and you could use that hidden meaning as part of your argument, kind of like reading between the lines. However, whatever you do, you have to make sure that you use your insight into the source's point of view or origin to enhance your argument. No matter how subtle or correct your reading of the person's intentions or biases are, if you don't actually do anything with that to enhance the argument, then it won't count. It has to be used in your argument. Okay, so next, you need to try and use 2 outside sources of information or 2 outside pieces of evidence. That is stuff that's not already contained in the documents. So this could be stuff that you know from the textbook or stuff from lectures or just stuff you've learned about the Mongols elsewhere. But you need to use these pieces of evidence in your argument. Once again, you can't just say random facts. They need to be structured to support your thesis. So you could say, I know this fact, blah, 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 and it supports the thesis because, or it shows a reaction to the Mongols, blah, blah, blah. It needs to be a piece of evidence used in your argument, not just a random fact. And then last of all, and I like to do this as kind of a conclusion paragraph, is you need to go for the complexity point. Now, the complexity point can be hard to wrap your head around at first, but it's actually pretty simple. You simply need to add nuance or add some flavor to your thesis. Your original thesis is probably going to be kind of boring, Mongols or the Muslims and Christian observers responded similar to the Mongols because blah and blah. But the complexity point is a chance for you to spice it up a little bit. You could extend your thesis by showing how other cultures also responded to the Mongols similarly. You could qualify your thesis by talking about some differences between how Christians and Muslims reacted to the Mongols. You could talk about how reactions to the Mongols change over time, how like later on the reactions shift. And you could even connect it to other time periods or other invasions. So like, for example, you could consider maybe how Christians and Muslims responded to the Mongol invasion and compare that to, I don't know, maybe how folks in India responded to the British invasions. If you know about that, I know we haven't gotten to that in the course yet. But I would say that generally the easiest thing to do for this essay would be to talk about differences as well as similarities. So can you identify any differences in the documents that you have, in the attitudes, and then explain, consider maybe why this difference exists, and consider whether or not your original thesis is still valid. And it probably is, because even if one difference does exist, it doesn't mean that the similarities you've identified aren't real. So anyway, guys, that is a quick rundown of what you need to do. So contextualization and thesis in your intro, analyzing documents and introducing evidence from outside of the document packet to support your thesis. And then last of all, adding some nuance or some spice to your original thesis to get the complexity point. Okay, so I hope that helps. Feel free, of course, to chat me if you need additional assistance.